Good morning. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. This is the Daily Medicine Transmission for April 26, 2022. Happy Tuesday, Taco Tuesday around these parts. That's always something to be excited about. Welcome back, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well, taking good care of themselves. If you're new here, thank you for being here. We're going to talk about the seemingly calm space weather. Strangely enough, very calm in terms of what the sun is doing. And who knows how long that's going to last. Probably not for very long. We're going to talk about that because when the geomagnetic disturbance is low and when the magnetosphere is calm and there's not a lot of density or pressure, that means there's a lot more cosmic rays coming in. And with the moon in Pisces still, going to be Neptune in Pisces, right? There's going to be lots more intense dream experiences, astral travel, right? Multidimensional connections, past life experiences, you name it, especially in the dream state. It's so much easier for us at this moment, at least, to access this while we're sleeping. So we're going to talk about how the sun today is a Draco and Andromedan Starseed activation. I'm going to talk about what an activation is. Someone in Telegram had asked that question. I thought that was great, and so I'm going to expand on that a little bit in this transmission. And of course, we'll talk about the astrology, and we're going to have story time because the sun, in its activation of Andromeda and Draco, right, is in a direct trine to Alpha Draconis today. The Sabian symbol for that degree is the Samaritan woman at the well. So we're going to tell the story, and I'm going to offer an alternative esoteric perspective about what this story may mean and how it fits into what's happening right now, how it fits into the Starseed activation. So a lot of moving parts that we're going to bring together into hopefully something half as beautiful as this painting. So before I jump into all the specifics and start weaving all of the pieces together, I just want to draw attention here to this painting. So this is a painting of the woman at the well, the Good Samaritan. This is a biblical story, and it's one of the more noted, so it's very easy to look up all kinds of information about, biblical interpretation, and I'm going to offer the esoteric mystery school interpretation and how this is about the necessity of the divine feminine to be part of the creationary process at a spiritual level, evolutionary level, and how this is connected to Draco and Andromeda seems kind of weird right now, but by the time we get to the end of this, I'm hoping that it won't be as strange. So these are some themes that those who are subscribers and part of the Starseed Fellowship, these are things that I know we've talked about before, and I talk about with one-on-one clients, especially if you have these Starseed origins in your chart. So I want you to just look at this painting because what you see is the woman at the well, the Good Samaritan. You do see the figure that is representing Jesus, the avatar of the Piscean age, and he is in reverence to her. He is bowing to her. He is not even bowing. He is kneeling, right? He's in reverence. He's in almost worship in some ways of this woman. She has definitely got a darker tone to her skin, right? And I think that's important. Not to say that he doesn't either, but there's something distinctly darker about this rendering, and I think that's intentional and important as we go through it. But the fact that he is looking up to her, that she appears to be the central point of this, obviously this story, but in the idea that there is no creation without the space in which to create, which is what the feminine truly represents. And so these are themes that are ongoing, right, in terms of the emergence of the divine feminine as we are exiting out of the age of Pisces and soon to be into the age of Aquarius. But in some ways, she is the avatar of the age of Aquarius. She's the water bearer. She comes to the well and brings the water up from the well. She is the space in which Jesus is able to verbally and quite literally reveal himself as the Christ to her. Something that, as far as I understand it, is, and why this story is so important is he's never done that with any of his disciples. So why this woman? Well, the Good Samaritan idea is that, she helped bridge the gap because they're part of two tribes that of Hebrews that supposedly hated each other, but because she was an outcast, which, by the way, is a very Aquarian thing, right? She was an outcast. She didn't necessarily follow the social and cultural standards, but was always pushing her voice to have an impact, to widen it, to broaden it, to maybe come to a higher consciousness about things. The idea here is that humanity as a whole was her interest, and that's also a very Aquarian theme. But it was through her resistance to social and cultural standards, right? That she had many husbands and that she was living with a man that she wasn't married to, right? These are all very sinful things to be doing, apparently. But because she was an outcast in her own society, she was able to receive Jesus without any judgment, and he was able to reveal himself to her as the Christ. And then she had her awakening moment, and then took it back to her her community was herself reborn, and then was able to share that ministry with those who hated where he came from. The idea is that the well on the land came from their common ancestor, which I think is Jacob, right? I'm not a biblical historian or scholar, so this is a lot. I didn't grow up in a church, right? Like, I did go, and it was a very loose, belief system. I didn't grow up in a home where my parents were, and they haven't been ever really hyper religious, so anyway, I'm learning as I go, but what I do know is the esoteric explanation of this story, and I want to bring it into the Starseed conversation because it's a big part of the Draco activation. So let's get into the solar weather and just kind of anchor ourselves in what's actually happening out there energetically and how that obviously affects us. So there we go. So let's look at the Schumann. This is the electromagnetic field of our own planet, right? Based on her own heartbeat and the field that she emits that protects us, right? That keeps us from being bombarded. Now, she is amplifying. You can see the amplification. It's not as loud as it has been, but it's still consistently amplifying. And the sun is still, so those sunspots are still flaring, right? And so it's not as loud as it's been, but it's been a consistent, amplification, right? Like the heartbeat is still very much responding to, and in some ways responsive to what is happening on the sun. So when we look at what's happening on the sun, we're going to see here, number one, yes. And this is spaceweather.com. You can just go and find this information for yourself. I just track it every day. This is how I, bring together all of these pieces of data and come to analyze them. That's a very Virgo thing, by the way. So the solar wind, it actually just between this morning and now has increased a little bit, so it's getting stronger. We are in, a coronal hole, as we're going to see, is here, and we will receive that solar wind in just a number of days. And you can see that the sunspots that are facing us right here that you see on the sun, they are flaring, right? These are low-level flares, though, C3, C6, and you can kind of see a correlation even with these smaller cracklings and flares. They're not releasing CMEs. They're not powerful enough. They are flaring, and it does seem like that the sun or the planet continues to respond, and there's amplification of the Schumann, but there's no indication yet that anything is going to erupt and shoot any plasma our way. So in some ways this is good, and you can see right here that it's circled, and that represents that there is an active sunspot that's coming into view, that they are, and it had flared earlier, what's over here. So we're still watching And I've really thought that by now there would be something. And what it seems to me is that there's a lot of quiet that is allowing us to really tap into what is the nature of our space in order to receive. And really being able to connect into Venus right now in Pisces, I think, is a big part of this. So before we get too much into that aspect, let's just finish up our space weather update. And of course, you can always go to Suspicious Observers is one option. That's the one that I really like in terms of, and we're going to look at that too. Even NASA has to, advertise and sell shit. So that's something else to keep in mind. I'm gonna keep you from having to look at advertisements. KP is quiet. We know what that means. More cosmic rays coming in, right? What is that? Those are particles, charged particles moving near the speed of light. They really do impact us. Here's that coronal hole, right? The solar wind is on its way. So perhaps there is going to be more, and I've been saying that for a couple days and I have been wrong, just like it feels like we're getting ready for something, and there is this crackling and this crackling and this crackling on the sun, and the earth magnetic field is getting louder and louder, right? Is also in rhythm, right? In rhythm is also getting ready for something. It's just what it feels like. And so I'm kind of like waiting, and maybe it's just that's with the divine feminine coming into view right now, my own personal readings, and with the all of this space weather that seems to be actually do you ever if you have cats or you watch cats or anything, when they are ready to pounce and they get into that crouched position and they are really low to the ground. Remember, this is part of the ministry about the chameleon, about the mouse, right? And that energy, that fiery energy, it's almost like it is pulling in and contracting and getting ready to pounce. And the space in which to pounce, whatever that means to you, is what we're focusing on right now. And this is the role of the divine feminine that's represented by the woman at the well, who I actually think is a composite character as well. That's my personal opinion. So just to kind of show that there has been a lot of variability and that the field has been, impacted. It's stable, but it has been impacted and moving around. And then there was this must have been a malfunction in terms of measurement, because it all just stopped, and then it spiked a bunch in terms of solar wind speed and solar wind temperature, but then it dropped back off again. And so like I said, we know that when the KP index is really quiet, that we are subject to cosmic rays, which have a much stronger impact on us than, I would say, plasma or even light. Photonic light doesn't have mass. Cosmic rays they have mass. It's particles of matter, subatomic, right? You're talking about protons and ions and charged particles moving at the speed of light, but photons don't have matter. It's different. And that's what's coming off of the sun, as well as plasma from these solar flares. So, it's interesting how this has an impact on us too, psychiatrically, psychologically, and in our bodies when cosmic rays. So whatever you need to do for calm sleep, it's going to be active sleep no matter what, I would say, over the next day or so. But it's also, it's going to be active sleep. So whatever you can do to help that process along, to keep your body as relaxed as you can, right? To really allow that parasympathetic nervous system to be active and to bring everything into a state of relaxation rather than fight or flight or freeze or just when I say activated in this way, when your sympathetic nervous system is active, that means that, that you're getting blood pumped to your, extremities, that you are not relaxed, that your muscles are tense, right? That the neural activity is heightened, right? Because there is, a sense of danger, right? And so every time you get pulled into a narrative that is bringing that all up in you, you have to be really clear about, what it's actually generating in terms of a space within you. So here is the astrology for today as well. And then we'll get into story time, because I want all these threads are going to, pull together into how important it is to be aware of the space in which creation is able to take place. And that has just as much of an impact as the actual discovery or the spark of life or the potency of life force being released. And that is very much the allegory, I feel like, of the woman at the well. So I think that she is also a composite character with Mary Magdalene. And I've heard this from other people. I've had discussions with other people about this as well. And I'm sure that there are people that have come up with this perspective through their own research. And I don't know who they are necessarily, but I feel like that this is that this character is a composite character as well, representing the divine feminine, representing the coiled snake. And remember, this is where Chiron is right now, is the coiled snake, right? In a moment of potential energy as opposed to activated, right? There needs to be a space in which this can be held. And this, I think, is the well, right, is an important part of this. So the moon is in Pisces and is going to be in Pisces for the duration of today and into tonight. It's really going to be into tonight and early in the morning tomorrow, where the moon will meet Venus and Neptune and Jupiter and come into a personal connection and alignment and resonance, very strong resonance with the themes that all of these planets are representing in Pisces. The materializing of our own vital energies to substantiate something, the purging that comes at us, when the soul triggers a catharsis in order to completely purge out all perversions. This is a conversation that's been coming up a lot in personal conversations, and something that I talked about yesterday with the ministry in terms of my own triggers and things. This is part of the purge as well. These types of perversions that have seeped into and have been allowed to grow. And this is something that is something that we should really think about in terms of what we are cultivating, because this is the essence of the next eclipse cycle. And I'll be showing some promotional material very soon for my next reading sale around this time frame. So in the meantime, though, the moon has already made a sextile very early this morning with Uranus. Uranus that is also activating Andromeda, and has been, right? Andromeda constellation, and has been for quite a while. And in particular, 14 to 15 degrees of Taurus is the character that is being revealed under a tremendous amount of diversity. And when you're talking about Uranus, it's shock, awe, things that you don't expect, but also the ruler of Aquarius, right? Which is representing the future and the creative evolution that we are able to move towards when we utilize our inner polarization as an opportunity to create something new. I mean, life is going to evolve. That is the MO of life in this universe, is to evolve. And I would say any universe is to evolve. And that means evolving through the densities, through dimensions. Mathematically, I think it's already been established that there's 11, right? And we know that there's probably more. I'd say about 15 at this point that we can identify. But we know here there's 11. And that's a big part of the bigger galactic picture in terms of dimensions and densities and where we're going. So that's more than I can explain here in this moment. But the moon in the sextile in Pisces, right? This is also a Syrian starseed activation. Very subtle, right? We're just talking about the moon in Pisces, but it's in a direct trine to Sirius. And it's the idea here that, There's things that will seem like simulations, right? And they are simulations, but they seem very real. And it's because they are. And sometimes you have to expose yourself to something very real, like live shells. It may be a simulated battle, but the live rounds are what actually draws out the feeling of valor in people and a feeling of group responsibility. And so there's a sense of guardianship that comes from the Syrians in their best possible alignment. It's really about taking care of ourselves and the impact that has on the entire whole, and how important it is that we take responsibility for not only ourselves, but for everyone around us, as if we are responsible for them. And I know that that's really difficult when you're an empath or that you have strong Pleiadian starseed connection, because that can really turn into martyrdom very quickly. And this is much more about the training of what that means, and Uranus kind of waking us up to what that means. And Uranus and the shifting and the changing and the unexpected nature and the radical rebellion type of experience that Uranus can represent a pioneer in some ways. And the woman at the well, she represented the space in which to receive the future evolution, because she was already disconnecting from the obsolete patterns of the past by way of her who she is, right? And so, but this is also about the natural, process of that growth, and we have to be challenged in a lot of ways. And so Uranus is big time challenge in this position, in conjunction with Menkar, right? The fixed star of Menkar is also in while it's in the Andromeda constellation, it's also, that longitude is also the nose of the sea monster, the nose of the Kraken, right? So, and those things are connected, right? The Kraken and Andromeda in terms of mythology are connected. And so it's in the process of the adversity that we learn who we really, really are. And so that is going to come through all of these Aquarian and Uranian type of experiences of shock, awe, into, the nature of the social or collective bandwidth, which has to do with social media. I mean, there's no way around that. But in terms of the very material value, right, of the adversity of the material world that Taurus represents in this moment. And so feeling into how this is really just part of the simulation to practice for the main event, right? It's like a dress rehearsal. And so I know that seems a little foreboding, but there's something important in this connection, this sextile, right? The 60-degree angle, which represents transmutation from within, right? The two trines that are opposing each other, our own inner polarization that we blend and use to create something new. This happened already. So as the moon moves through the rest of the day, the main event here as it goes through the day is 12 hours later, right? As it moves through Pisces and maybe has a number of, while it may have a number of small and minor aspects going through, through the day, what we're going to find is that it's going to be at the end of the day that the moon in Pisces starts to wake up again. And so it's going to have a connection to Venus. And then they are also, the moon is also going to make its connection with her own nodal axis, right? And so we'll be in a trine to the south node in Scorpio, be in a sextile to the north node in Taurus. And at the same time is basically right after that is then going to meet Venus, which is in that degree of our dharma, right? So we come into also this communion within ourselves, within our bodies, within our embodiment, within what we value in terms of the transcendental experience of Pisces. It becomes something that we are emotionally connecting to. So having Venus and the moon come together in Pisces, I mean, this is the woman at the well, right? Truly the nature of the woman at the well. and the Dharma, right? That we realize what it is we're here to do. And we feel it. We feel it in our bodies, in our senses. We may feel it expressed emotionally very powerfully. I mean, people have already been building up to these transits with Venus coming into conjunction with Neptune and Jupiter. So the moon crossing this point, into tonight, into early tomorrow morning, again, is going to possibly bring out a lot of this experience in the dream state. Very powerful, and the veil being non-existent in this moment, and also time being irrelevant here. So connecting into experience from multidimensionally into experiences from different starseed angles. And this is Orion, right? All of this late Pisces energy is in square to Orion. So it's also coming to terms with the aspects of the Orion starseed nature that really challenge it, which is the blending, which is the surrendering to unity consciousness and wholeness in the process of coming back into a new creative uniqueness, right? The Orion nature is really been a serious issue for us here because of the way that they approach reality. Now, there are many star systems, there are many beings. There's in Orion, and it's not all negative, right? But this is part of making sense of where you come from, which star system in particular is going to have a lot to do with your own natal chart. And we are looking at especially where Jupiter and Neptune, right? Jupiter in particular is starting to come into alignment, into square with Betelgeuse. So, like I said, lots of different stars in the Orion constellation, lots of star systems, lots of variety. There's AI that has come from Orion. There has been intervention at the biblical religious level through the Orions, for good and for bad, right? Attempting to make some sort of amends or to be part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem. But part of that means the control still. There's also the reptilian agents of the Orion, and, just the general feel of being very competitive and very, trickster oriented as well. But that also means that there's a logic, there's a discipline, there is a sense of real self-esteem that comes from this as well, that we have had a chance to really learn about. So now it's like the experience of letting that go so that we can go back to source, that there is whatever has doubled down on this negative or regressive aspect of the Orion starseed nature or the beings in general. Like, it's just going to be really difficult for the purging. And you're seeing that in all kinds of ways, right? Stuff that we talked about yesterday in the ministry. So if you have starseed markings that are Orion, and especially along this axis of Virgo and Pisces in particular, just know that those experiences might start really surfacing into very real emotions for you that seem to make no sense or seem to not be necessarily as relevant. Some people, it's going to be completely relevant. It's going to be so expressed in their own actions right now in this life that there will be no difference, right? But some of us are going to be also just feeling into those experiences and how they've influenced our decisions in the past, maybe. So again, the space in which the creation is able to happen has a lot to do with the quality of the space that we are providing. And this is the feminine within us, right? And there is no creative transmutation without both of these aspects coming together. So the moon in Pisces today is just bringing a lot of this lesson up to the surface in so many different ways. Again, this is why knowing your own chart and your own starseed markings is important. So the sun is also, like I said, in trine to Alpha Draconis. The sun is in a conjunction to a star in Andromeda constellation that in Chinese, in a Mandarin dialect, means the gate to the South Camp. It's a star in the left knee of Andromeda as a constellation. So in terms of Draco, in terms of Andromeda, it's just activating those who have those starseed positions, especially if you have strong connections to this particular degree, like I do. It's where my natal Chiron is. Oh, wow. Talk about like healing some wounds around both of the Draco aspect, right? Because how has it gone wrong? Well, they have really fucked some shit up. Right? They have the Draco are master geneticists. They are the dragon energy. They are the serpent wisdom. And they have mastered it in a way that they have mastered genetics. I mean, this is what we talk about when we talk about the mastering of one's own energy in Kundalini, because it is being offered for this process of creation and transmutation. And so that is genetics. That is what happens in genetics, right? When that process happens of the seed and the egg coming together, for instance, that is a genetic manipulation, but it's natural. It's coded by something that created this entire universe. Now, the Draco figured out some things in terms of their own discipline, their own brilliance, their own intense dedication to this process. And here we are, right? For better or for worse. And there's a lot. The Draco, as far as I understand it at this point, they're not active anymore. Here, they don't have a control mechanism other than the reverberation of all of their minions, just like not knowing what else to do, right? And so the starseeds in particular, that are related to this, I mean, this is about how that energy is coded into us as a divine birthright that doesn't need to be manipulated or used for manipulation, but it still needs to be acknowledged as part of the process, the space, the serpent medicine, the coiled snake, right? And so we know Chiron is in this degree in Aries, right? The coiled snake and the polarization and the ritualization of polarization and how that creates, right? And how that has been used against us, how that has been siphoned, how that has been inverted for something else. We have to take this back. And part of it is this, this divine feminine, this space in which to create. Now, so there's the Andromedan and Draco activation of the sun, because the Andromedan nature, as far as I understand it, especially having this connection here, is this without the manipulation. They are fifth density humans that have left alone to evolved without the input of necessarily the Draco intrusion, right? And so this is also coming to terms with what is actually still absolutely natural and relevant and part of our divine blueprint, and what has been inverted or used against us. And this is part of this activation. So if you know you have these starseed markings, you'll be brought into a sense of identification with both of them, and it's for you to work out and to know where it's at in your chart. I'm just here to bring the message and interpret the pattern through my own storytelling, basically. So let's actually move into storytelling. So when we come into this evening, the moon is going to meet, like I said, the nodes, right? The nodes of the moon, Taurus and Scorpio, right? Resource versus generated power when we bring our resources together, right? That is magic. And it's not in and of itself what is negative. It is how it has been inverted and exploited and used to take us to try to bypass something that we can never bypass, which is our own creators. So, and that's not just us as humans. That's like, this is a huge galactic story, and more, right? A universal story. So when the moon, by tomorrow, the moon's going to come into Aries by the end of the day, and Venus is going to meet Neptune directly. So I anticipate that this space of quiet, this space of reception, this divine feminine energy, these Andromedan and Draco connections today are vital to understanding the space. Are we going to acknowledge our shadow as we come into this convergence, and understand it and know that it's there for creationary purposes within ourselves, and what that means? Or are we going to, and this is going to be very difficult for some people, right? It already is, and will continue to be so. So this is a moment, again, to be able to tap into this through our own feels, right? With the moon in Pisces, tap into our feels of what has gone wrong before. So, and what we can do differently now, right? We do not have to feed into the inversion and the fear, but we also have to be very realistic about what that means. So, Pluto is going to station retrograde by the end of this week, right? The 29th. And the reason this is important and related to this topic, and then we'll get into our story time, is that there's these three phases of Pluto, just like everything else, right? And so there's the destruction phase, there's the fallow period, and then there's the rebirth, or the new growth that happens. And the destruction phase, as much as it is really destructive and upsetting and elicits a lot of, it releases a lot of energy in a lot of ways, it's really that fallow emptiness that seems to be the problem for us. And the well, so to speak, maybe the abyss, and the fact that it's just space. And we're going to be going into this space now. It is going to station retrograde, and we're going to reach a point of, at least with the Pluto return of the US, and I'm telling, and if you know this because you have a reading for me, there are a lot of starseeds that have direct, down to the minute, connections to this Pluto return of the US, like down to the minute in their charts. And so, and lots of people, starseeds, are having this connection. So this is July, right? So we're going to come into this fallow period, and we have to really start addressing our own shadow. We have to really start addressing the space in which we want to have the revelation be, brought forward to us. And the quality of it as well is directly related and proportional to the space in which it is created. And so this is the allegory that I'm going to offer about the Samaritan woman. And this is where we can wrap up, because in the exoteric, this is the Good Samaritan, right? To bypass even the cultural constraints of superficial hate, and be able to see each other as brother, sister, family, right? Great. I think the exoteric is really valuable. Now, when we talk about the esoteric, this is where it gets a little interesting, and the Draco aspect, the transmutation, the alchemy comes into effect. And if you've ever heard Alan Watts, he has a lecture that's called, it's basically called God is a Black Woman. It's amazing. And it really is a great supplement to what I'm saying here, or just a part of the overall curriculum. Because look, as we talked about in the beginning, you see the way that they're positioned with each other. So, and what it means, exoterically. Here's the esoteric version, in my opinion, right? And I don't know if other people have come to this conclusion. I haven't specifically read it. I've had conversations with other friends and people on the same path where they've come to this conclusion, or they've read it somewhere. And I personally agree with this, that let's just suspend our particular belief, if we have one, that these two figures are composite characters. And I know that Alex Collier has said that the A's are the Andromedans through his contact. This is what they've said. I've come to this conclusion. Now, I mean, in the Essenes, there may have been a very specific literal person that came out of the Essene community that was trained in the mysteries, right? Trained in the mystery schools that were kept secret, that were there for healing, for love, for the connection to spirit, to be in communion, you know what I mean, with the world, right? All of the aspects about the Pleiadian nature and the Andromedan nature, to be perfectly honest, that are part of our birthright. So, but as a composite character expressed in the biblical text. Well, this Good Samaritan, the woman at the well, I also believe is Mary Magdalene, and she herself is a composite character of the divine feminine. And it's not so much that she was I believe, and I know that others believe this as well, and I'm sure this is something that's been researched and written about and talked about, is that this Magdalene character, composite character, esoterically is the priestess, right? She is the space in which to receive. She is the Isis, the Inanna, the divine feminine that receives the revelation, right? And so it is in their union, right, that the Christ is able to truly reveal himself, because she not is so much that she's an outcast, she's a trained priestess. She's a trained, ordained priestess of the mystery schools, and she's embedded in her community as a citizen. And it's when Jesus finds her that he is able to reveal his true nature, because she is, in fact, the representative through her training in the priestess. The priestesshood, right? She is and the idea that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, and that Jesus, was able to release these demons. I think that there's something to that, and not so much that she was a whore, but she wasn't necessarily celibate. She was a sacred priestess. She represented the space in which the alchemical union, that it was expressed likely through sexual alchemy, through tantric practices, but didn't have to be. She was trained. She was trained, and she was trained to receive the revelation from Jesus, because she was already trained and practicing as a sacred priestess. This is my opinion. And so when you read this allegorically and start to consider what the serpent medicine and the Draco intrusion around genetics and the power of the sacred union and alchemy, you start to see this conversation in a whole, or this story in a whole new light and in a whole new meaning. And this is what the sun is representing today. So find that space within you, regardless of your gender identity, your sexual identity. It has nothing to do with that as much as the esoteric, spiritual, energetic realization of this space within you, right? Because we embody both of these composite characters as we evolve spiritually. So whatever this means to you is something that you journey to find, right? And with the moon in Pisces, meaning Venus, Neptune, and Jupiter, and the Venus-Neptune conjunction that is about the catharsis of the soul to purify the perversions, much like Jesus actually, exorcised the demons out of Mary Magdalene. And that's definitely a possibility. That is part of astral and energetic hygiene, is to not allow the darkness to or the fear or the attachments to stay. That is a big part of the training, I am sure, as a woman in the mystery schools and in the priestess order. So again, it's through the alchemical union that those are all pushed away or released from us as well, right? That we have our own transmutation in that moment. So the sun today making the connection to, we can't go back. We can't go back necessarily and change what has already happened now, at least not physically, right? We can't do this with our physical vessels. We've already been impacted and intruded upon genetically. Now it's time to really acknowledge for ourselves the spiritual nature that is infinite, that we always have agency over, and it's just stepping into it. But right now, in these days leading up to the Pluto retrograde, it feels like time to address this for ourselves and what this means. And yes, there are ways, as we know, that this type of very potent energy has been inverted for so long, and it has reached the depths of depravity, perversion, right? A sense of what is I don't want to say unforgivable, because that's not our job necessarily at that level, to forgive ourselves and to forgive humans for being human, even at their darkest, but to also acknowledge that without a purity and a dedication to the highest order of this work, then this is exactly how it gets perverted and used against us and inverted. So we have to be aware of this. And this is part of the convergence, right, of the timelines, because that alternate timeline that's converging is all of the fear-based, aggressive attempts, which are not going to work. We already know this. The template is already set. We have to acknowledge this part of ourselves, though, so that we can bring in transmutation, right? Alchemical creation, rather than getting caught in the loop forever of this polarity. And nobody's going to get caught in the loop. That's the thing. If you're not ready to come out of this in your own soul's journey, there will be a place for you to go to continue evolving at third density. That's just the way it's going to be. It's very difficult for us that are making the transition with the planet. We have to find the patterns of meaning to align with, so that we can do this successfully and not be overcome with the darkness and the fear, right? And not get pulled back into the loosh factory. It's just, there's no reason to do that, right? But it's very easy because it's been in play for so long. Just like the Pharisees in the Old Testament and the New Testament had a lockdown on this for so long and used it for their own ends. When we use this energy for truly the sake of humanity and divinity, there's just no stopping us. So whatever this means for you is something that you explore on your own and through personal reading. So actually, great segue. I want to share my next. I'm going to share a flyer here for my next my next reading sale. Oops, that's not what I wanted to let go of. There we go. Sorry, guys. There we go. So eclipse season is upon us. I say May, but it's really April 30th is our new moon in Taurus. That is a solar eclipse, a partial solar eclipse. There is likely going to be some free content around this. There's going to be some content that's for subscribers and that will be available for purchase on Brighteon, including our next new moon forecast. Hopefully, if I can get it together. And I have to change the formatting, obviously, on this now. But this is my next reading sale, so $99 for a 90-minute recording that's looking at your astrological forecast for the eclipse season, right? From May to November. How are we going to cultivate what it is we want to grow in the garden of our, our life, our reality, our own consciousness? So I'm just going to get the ball rolling on this, putting it up there. You can go to catalystenergies.net, and on the homepage, there'll be an option to book this particular reading directly. And there'll probably be an add-on, a Reiki add-on or something, but I figure since it's just time to get this out there. So with that being said, my friends, I'm going to post it on Telegram. If you're not on my email list, you can go to the website as well and get on the email list, and I'll send out all the promotional material through the list as well. But I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. You know the spiel. Everything is down in the description box below for you if you are interested. Don't forget to subscribe. If you like this content, you want to see this channel grow, you hit the like button, you share, you comment, you subscribe, because that actually does have an impact on the algorithm that influences the dissemination of this content. So thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great day. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other the best you can. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.